Hello, this is David, Nwagu David, your real estate and property coach. Today we'll be considering a topic I find very interesting: how to build a house from the scratch and saving lots of money. I've seen people build houses from the scratch and not putting some of these things in perspective, and they suffer the consequence. A few years ago, 3 years to be specific, a lady called me to come and help her check her property on what she can do to it. Lovely building and upstairs. She just finished building. I had a construction work not far from this property. But she saw what I did and she considered what her engineer did, a current certified engineer. The building has sunk, the building was cracking, the roofs were caving in, and a number of other things, because he didn't consider some of these things when he started building. You take an engineer that has been building in Abeokuta and you bring him to Lekki, it's not the same thing. Everything is different. So the rules of the game is different. Some things to consider when you are building in Lagos or any part of the world. Number one, consider your desirable environment to build. And when I mean desirable environment, you must put a number of things in perspective. Number one is the ground stability. When I mention ground stability, what are we looking at? A lot of things come to play there. In Lekki, we have an environment with salty water. We have an environment that the ground is not stable. So you need to put all of these things into perspective. I've seen people construct. After constructing, they didn't take care of the woods, dead woods under the building. So those dead woods begin to cave in after getting rots over the years, and the building collapsed. So when you are building, first you must consider the ground stability. How is the ground? Where are you building? What are you building on? Have you done your ground preparations and the rest of them? You must consider all of that. When I want to build as a real estate practitioner, what I do is I excavate all the ground, get to the bottom of it, and know what we have under the ground before putting any block or stone or whatsoever in the ground. Number two, we must consider the climate. What climate are you building within? When you have a place like Lekki compared to the mainland, the climate must come to play. We have an environment where most of what we have, especially the ions, begin to get rotting because of the saltiness of the environment. So here you must use a strong and reinforced iron rod where you are going to construct, so you don't suffer decay over the years or suffer destruction of the iron over the years. So number two. Then number three, you must consider the infrastructure or the community infrastructure. What do they have? Are there hospitals? Number two, are there schools and other infrastructures you must consider? You don't build a house in an estate one and you must travel 3 or 30 minutes or 40 minutes. When there is traffic, you may do 3-4 hours to send your children to school or for medical. If you have a wife that is also young, that you are just bringing up children, you must also consider, if you are not in town, how will she navigate a decent clinic, especially for maternity care. These are some of the things to consider. Number one is utility. Number four is utility. What are the utilities you have there? I have a friend of mine, anytime I want to reach him in the evenings, I can't reach him because while he's at home, there are no networks. You can't get him on his Airtel, you can't get him on his MTN because the networks there are zero. So you must consider things like this before you construct a house. We've had people that avoid local agents when making a purchase of a property, and most times they fall into the hands of crooks. When you are making a purchase, you must consider a decent local agent who knows the terrain, who can help you locate whoever you are buying from, who can help you do your due diligence, who can help you search out the property you require. Don't run into a crook because you want to avoid either 5%, 2% or 10% you pay the local agent. I've had instances like that where the local agent take them to a property, then they avoid the local agent and fall into the hands of crooks. Get a local agent, negotiate with them before making a choice of such property, so you agree from the get-go. Number three is documentations. When you are making a purchase of a property, you must ensure that the money for documentations, the survey plans, the deed of assignment, you pay legal professionals to get one for you. The survey plan, pay the monies you should pay to the government. Don't cut corners. I've seen people mention that the cost of their survey shouldn't be more than 20,000. is not right, that's going to give you what I call backdated or provisional copy. That's not a decent survey. That's not a registered survey. You must get your survey registered. And after registering the survey, you go to the lands to confirm that the survey is properly registered. It's important that you don't cut corners when you are building a house you want to stay in for several years. You don't cut corners. It's important you go through the right channels. Then you get the architect, a proper architect. Get professionals to work with you. Don't try cutting corners. Many people cut corners and they cut themselves short. It's important we do the right things when we are making a choice of property to purchase. Number 4, when you are making choice of a property, you must consider the cash you have. I've seen many people, they bought a property 30, 40, 50 million. After the purchase, they didn't make allowances for construction, for fencing. They didn't make allowances for that. They didn't make allowances for documentations. They leave a land bare. You are dealing with crooks so many times. Evil people go back there, resell your property. Some of them, after buying, they run back to their stations, some abroad, for 5-10 years. Then they assume they have a property. You must take some level of possession. Even if it's security house, you need to put something there and let your presence be felt there. Recently, not long, a few days ago, I bought a property somewhere. And the person I bought from said he's not going to touch the money until I take some level of possession. And I didn't blame him because he had gotten his fingers beaten. And of course, trust me, I had to do something about that. Don't buy properties and leave it bare. It's important. Number 5, you must prepare what I call ECB, estimated cost of building. You don't go into a building project without having your costs. The first cost to prepare is the cost of ground setting or setting out. You must get that cost, then you move to the next, which is foundation or raft, depending on where you are building. You must have that cost together so you don't start a project where you can't continue. Every stage you get to, if you don't continue, it attracts a number of degradation. Example, you get to the deck and you didn't cover. Wear and tears from the wind, from thunderstorms, from rain, begin to damage that building. I've had such experience years ago. I started a project, I didn't continue for 5 years. After 5 years, going back to that project, I needed to do some kind of reinforcement to correct some structural defects. There were cracks already appearing on the decks as a result of the rain that had stayed there for a while, the rainwater that stayed there for a while, and it began to damage the building. I needed to go and start afresh to construct. It's important you do all of this ECB, estimated cost of building, the breakdown, before going in. It's important you have that. You start with the raft or foundation, you go to the deck, you go to the block setting, you go to the roofing, you go to the finishing, you go to the plastering, and all of these things must be taken into cognizance. I'm to start a building somewhere. I've done my estimation from ground to finish with allowances because of the cost of building materials that keep going on. So I left 10-15% allowance on that. It's important you get that together. Number 6 is, what's your level of involvement in the building work? You can't do all the buildings to get yourself, trust me. You need professionals, you need site engineers, you need architects, you need people coming to check the dimensions to be sure you don't shoot on the right or to the left and that the building is properly aligning. If not, you're going to be constructing a building that is going either tilting to the right or tilting to the left. So you need professionals to come and help you with dimensions, with supervision to be sure. Now the question is, what is your level of involvement? What is your level of involvement? You must be sure that you agree all of these things together before getting them. Sometimes what I do is I tell the site engineer, you work with me for the block setting or you work with me for the foundation for a week or 2. This is the cost I'm going to agree with you and I pay you for that work done and you go. When I get to the next stage, I could not call them back. It's important you agree all of these things from the beginning so you don't have issues with, oh sorry, I didn't know this was what we were supposed to be doing. I didn't know this cost is going to be attracting. Finally, the building work commences. At the point of your foundation, I encourage every building owner to bring out, even if it's a week or 2, to be sure that the mixtures, the gravel, the sand, the sharp sand, and the cement is aligning. You don't give it out to parts. If you do that, very soon the building will fail. I had this engineer that worked with me years ago. I would call his name Jegede, even though that's not his real name. I gave him this work to do, and he didn't know he was dealing with someone that was a little knowledgeable on building. It was on a Sunday. I went for a church service and I returned back. I called him to the site. And we got to the site. It's just my hands I used to touch the mixture. It was porous. Trust me, nothing would have stayed on that building. I told him to remove all of it. Sometimes we give that money to these guys. Sometimes we give them cement. 5 bags for a mixture, they do 3 bags and they sell 2 bags to cut corners. He's supposed to have a mixture of 5 bags of cement and decide to sell 2 bags and mixes 3 bags of cement. What that means is a red flag or a devastating signal for tomorrow. When you have improperly mixed foundation, what happens is you begin to experience crack or building collapse. That's what happens in most places you see building collapse. So at the point of foundation, it's important to bring out time to sit with them. I've had experiences, like I mentioned earlier. I had this young boy that I gave this work to do on a Sunday, thinking that he would deliver, but he failed and failed woefully. On my return from church service, I got to the site in the evening and I checked the mixture he did. It was porous and terrible. Nothing could have stayed on such mixture. It's important you dedicate time when you are doing your foundation, very importantly, and mostly the pillars is important. These are what the building sits upon. Thank you.